It's not uncommon to look at your phone and find something shocking making news. In fact, it's so common many people tend to forget about the last shocking crime as another tends to bring more shock value. Today I'm going to take you back 80 years and tell you about a crime so shocking it's still being talked about to this day. In 1941, crime wasn't as common as you see today. Don't get me wrong, people have always been shady, but not so much was brought to the attention like the case that happened at 3335 West Moncrief Place in Denver. That's where 73-year-old Philip Peters lived for over 30 years until he was bludgeoned to death on the night of October 17th, 1941. For almost a year, neighbors and the Denver police were baffled due to the fact that doors were all locked from inside the home, and Mr. Peters was there alone due to his wife Helen being in the hospital for months from a broken hip. After returning home, Mrs. Peters hired two ladies to help with her care, both of whom made several police reports about strange noises and smells coming from the home. The hired help wouldn't be the only ones to make such complaints, as several of the neighbors reported strange noises and smells to the police as well. After several reports, the police decided to stake out the place, and on the night of July 30th, 1942, when they were searching the place on the first floor, they heard a lock coming from upstairs. After proceeding upstairs, Detective Roy Bloxam opened a closet door, and there he saw a pair of legs disappearing upward through a tiny panel into the attic. He grabbed the man by his legs and pulled him down and yelled for his captain. When his captain came upstairs, he would describe the man as being the strangest looking human I had ever seen. He was a tall man, just under 6 feet, but thin as a wilted weed. His dirty hair hung low over his ears, and his skin was the ugly, unwashed gray of an overcast sky. That individual would turn out to be Theodore Coneys, who weighed only 75 pounds at the time. After feeding him a hamburger, apple pie, and some coffee, police began questioning the transient on Peters' murder. Mr. Coneys would confess to first knowing Mr. Peters 30 years prior, having met him at the guitar club where Mr. Peters helped him. Shortly after meeting Mr. Peters, Theodore left Denver for 30 years and returned in 1941, showing up at Mr. Peters' door again to ask for help. When Mr. Peters didn't answer, Theodore entered the home and made a plan to live in the attic's crawl space. The space was only 27 inches high and 57 inches wide, but Theodore made it his home. He made several accommodations while there, including splicing into the electricity and having a radio to keep in touch with the outside world. However, it would seem Theodore was getting a little too comfy, as he would find himself standing in the kitchen making coffee when Mr. Peters arrived home one evening, and he didn't remember Theodore after 30 years. Mr. Peters stated he was calling the police, and it was then Theodore grabbed a .44 caliber in the kitchen and hit Mr. Peters over the head with it. That didn't drop the 73-year-old, so Theodore again hit Mr. Peters with the .44 caliber, and like a legend he proceeded to continue to call the police, at which time Theodore grabbed a stove shaker and beat Mr. Peters until he was no longer moving. Theodore then went back into the attic, where he continued to live for almost a year before anyone discovered him. He was convicted of murder on Halloween 1942, and he spent the rest of his days living in comfort in prison at a facility in Kansas City until his death in 1967.
Hey people, Jesus here. And I just wanted to remind you, the only way into heaven is to become a subscriber to Blunt Trips. Imagine being stuck in eternity watching those other channels. Subscribe, and Jesus will love you even more. But you have to believe. See you soon. Jesus.